Hey guys, welcome back. Welcome back to New England Next Gen. See, I told you I'd be back. So today we're going to be covering Trump, the Constitution, and what would Jesus do? And I know that there are some that are watching that aren't Christians, and I apologize, but I do want to cover it for some of my audience, especially my family who watches, who are also Christians. Today we're going to be diving into President Donald Trump, why some people see his presidency as a good thing, why others disagree, and how the Constitution plays a big role in all of this. We're also going to look at Portland, Oregon as a real-life case study on federal versus state power. My goal isn't to convince you of one side. I'm always going to say that. I'm not trying to pick a side. I'm not saying I'm left, I'm not saying I'm right, and I just want to make sure that I let you know that I could be wrong, but this is what I've done on my research. It's to lay out the facts and give you something to think about, okay? I'm kind of like Charlie Kirking you guys today. I really want you guys to think, deep dive. I want you guys to go home and look at your phone and be like, oh, maybe I should look up this and see, what does it say about this? Is this fact true? She said this. I want to know if this is true. I want you guys to think for yourselves. That's the whole point of my podcast, is that you guys could think. I don't want you to just take what you see on your social media feed and take that as truth, because it's not always truth, even for me. So we're going to deep dive. Ready? Part 1. Why supporters see Trump as a good thing, okay? So this is going to be for the people who see him as good. Kind of doing like my Bad Bunny episode. Sorry, that was a bug. Supporters point out to a lot of accomplishment. The economy was strong pre-COVID with record low unemployment and rising wages. In foreign policy, he negotiated the Abraham Accords. It pressured NATO allies to contribute more and took a tough stance on China. He appointed 3 Supreme Court justices and reshaped the courts for decades. And he put a strong focus on immigration and border security. I also just want to quickly, before I go on, I did do some research on, like, what did Trump do for us? I just want to go, it's in my notes. Hold on one second, guys, because I really want to cover this. His major accomplishments. On a side note, I literally have explained that if you look up ChatGPT, my husband actually asked ChatGPT if it's democratically like biased, and in a way it kind of is, but it explains to us that it's not so much that it's like influenced by Democratic influence on purpose. It's just that it's all fed by the education system and education, in that education tends to be more liberal. So it leans, all the information that it gets, it leans that way. So I want to make you aware of that. So it is very hard to ask ChatGPT, like, hey, if you were to ask it, like I did it this morning, if you ask, hey, can you tell me everything that's good about Donald Trump and everything he's done in his presidency? It'll say, I'm sorry, I can't answer that for you because I'm not allowed to listen, speak on political, or it'll give some other answer. So then you have to re-ask the question and say, can you give me your unbiased opinion of all of the good things that Trump has done? And even then it kind of struggles. So you really have to deep dive. It is work. You can't just snap your fingers and get the info. Number 1 was NATO burden sharing. So that's what I already said, but I want to go deep dive into that, what it means. NATO is a military alliance where members are supposed to spend at least 2% of their GDP on defense. Many weren't meeting this. What Trump did was that he pressured allies, sometimes bluntly, Trump can be a little crazy with his way he speaks. He pressured them to pay more for their own defense instead of relying mainly on us, so we didn't have to, do all of it ourselves. Benefit was that by 2020, more countries increased their defense budgets, reducing America's financial burden and strengthening the NATO overall. And that is an actual fact, okay? 2, the Abraham Accords. I did mention that, but I'm going to go a little bit into that. It's a Middle East peace deal. So what it means is that for decades, many Arab countries refused to recognize Israel. What Trump did was that his team brokered that peace, which I know it's already gone, but I got this information prior to the ceasefire being over. But his team brokered peace and normalization agreements between Israel and the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. And the benefit of that was that it opened up trade, tourism, and cooperation. Messing up tonight. Opened up trade, tourism, and cooperation in the Middle East, reducing conflict and strengthening U.S. and diplomatic influence, okay? Number 3 is that defeating ICE So ISIS controls huge areas of Iraq and Syria in 2014 through 2016. What Trump did is that he gave the U.S. military commanders more freedom and resources to finish the fight. The benefit of that was by 2019, ISIS no longer controlled territory, which reduced global terrorism threats and protected civilians in the region. He didn't have to do that. I mean, it's not our country, but he wanted to make things better. 4, hostages releases. What it means is that Americans were being held prisoner overseas. What Trump did was he negotiated directly and publicly with foreign governments like North Korea and Egypt. And the benefit of that was several Americans came home safely, showing that the U.S. would not leave its citizens behind. There's number 5. I know it's not that many. I'm just going over the major ones, okay, guys? USMCA. It was a trade deal with Canada and Mexico. What it means is that the old it's the NAFTA, but NAFTA trade deal was seen as unfair, especially for U.S. factory workers. What Trump did was that he renegotiated it into the USMCA, which updated rules for auto production, labor rights, and digital trade. And the benefit to that was that there was more protections for American workers, stronger manufacturing standards, and a more modernized trade framework. 6, tariffs and trade pressure on China. So what that means is that the U.S. had a huge trade deficit with China. What Trump did was that he imposed tariffs, extra taxes is what they are, on Chinese imports to push China to make fair trade deals. The benefit of that was it raised revenue for the U.S. and forced China to the negotiating table. Supporters say that it protected U.S. jobs, and then critics will say that it raised some prices. But you can't have a perfect world. I mean, if we did, we'd be in heaven, right? Number 7, record low unemployment pre-COVID. And I mentioned this before. What it means is the unemployment rate dropped to about 3.5% in 2019, which was the lowest in about the last 50 years. And what Trump did is that he cut taxes, reduced regulations, and encouraged business investment. And the benefit to that was that more Americans had jobs, wages rose for many groups, and the economy was strong until the pandemic hit. And this is all before his other presidency too, I'm combining it all. Number 8 is, energy boom. What it means is that America was dependent on foreign oil. What Trump did was he opened up drilling pipelines and reduced restrictions on energy companies. So the benefit to that was that U.S. oil production hit record highs, moving towards energy independence. We didn't have to rely on other countries for their oil. So that gives us more independence as a country, which we want. We don't want to be dependent on someone. What if something goes wrong and then we're dependent on them? That makes it harder for us as Americans to have when we need oil. Sorry if I'm speaking too fast, but border security. So what it means, the southern U.S. border was a major focus of illegal immigration. What Trump did was he built, He built about 450 miles of new or upgraded border barriers and expanded enforcement. And the benefit to that was that supporters argued it made illegal crossings harder, it increased security, and it showed commitment to sovereignty. And 10 is crime and law and order. What it means is that safety in U.S. cities was a major campaign theme. What Trump did is that he promoted stronger policing and federal support for law enforcement. And the benefit to that was that violent crime decreased from 2017 to 2019 before spiking during the 2020 pandemic and unrest. The bottom line is that Trump supporters will point these accomplishments out as proof that he has made allies to pay for their fair share, created peace deals that were thought impossible, strengthened the economy and jobs, and he boosted American energy and independence, and secured the border and supported the law enforcement, which are all things he's basically all about law and order. He's trying to make the country better in his own way. I want to go back to, I want to go into the next part. So I know how I said I was going to do a case study, a real life case study. So part 2 of this, after I went through all that, I'm sorry if it was too long, but I'm going to go into part 2. Part 2 is the Supremacy Clause. I'm going to explain it simply. The Supremacy Clause is in Article 6 of the Constitution. It says the Constitution and federal laws are the supreme law of the land. That means if state law and federal law conflict, federal law always wins, okay? So here's a simple picture. America is like a sports league, and the league has official rules every team has to follow. Teams, which are the states, can have their own rules, but if one of those conflicts with the league rules override. So how does that connect to Trump? Immigration is a federal issue. Some cities and states, which are sanctuary cities, limited cooperation with ICE. Trump argued that under the Supremacy Clause, the federal government not only had the authority, but the duty to enforce immigration law nationwide. And supporters see him as upholding the Constitution, which he is. I have to say that because that is the truth. He is upholding the Constitution. If he wasn't upholding the Constitution, he wouldn't be able to do it. And then you can argue with me about that, but that's the fact. You feel free to message me afterwards, and we can debate that back and forth. But I can pretty strongly debate that. Part 3, Portland as a case study. Okay, so let's take Portland, Oregon for example. Right now, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that Trump can deploy the National Guard into Portland under federal authority, but another court order is blocking the move for now. So it's legally authorized, but it's not active yet. Local leaders say that they can handle things and that protests have often been small, sometimes fewer than 15 people a night. So they argue that federal involvement isn't necessary. And Trump's administration says that local officials aren't doing enough to protect federal property like the ICE facility and the federal courthouse. And this creates a clash. Are Portland police really failing? Or are federal officials stepping in too quickly? This is exactly where the Supremacy Clause becomes real. Federal law says that the U.S. government has the authority to protect its facilities, but local leaders argue that they're already doing their job and that federal troops escalate tensions, and the courts are still sorting it out. So here we go to part 4. Other constitutional powers Trump used, and it wasn't just immigration or Portland. A lot of Trump's actions fell directly under the Constitution, and I wanted to go into this because I want to show you guys that he is following the Constitution. So, judicial appointments. Article 2 gives the president power to nominate judges with Senate confirmation. Trump reshaped the courts exactly as the system was designed. Executive orders. Article 2 in the Constitution also empowers presidents to direct federal agencies. Trump uses this often, like many presidents have before him. Next is commander-in-chief powers. He used military authority abroad, which is his constitutional role. Veto power. He has vetoed bills, and Congress had the chance to override. A textbook example of checks and balances, which comes from our Constitution, again. Treaty and agreement power. He negotiated deals like the Abraham Accords, which fit the constitutional framework. Pardons, Article 2, lets the president issue pardons, which he exercised many times. And then impeachment and trial. He was impeached twice and acquitted twice, showing the constitutional process of accountability at work. Supporters say that this proves he was working within the rules. The debates are more about how he used that power, not whether he had it. So here we go to part 5. Dun, 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 dun. Why do critics disagree? Are you ready, guys? This is the part that you guys need to be ready to hear, okay? Of course, critics see this differently. They argue that, number 1, his style has fueled division and polarization. 2, his COVID response was inconsistent and left the public confused. 3, he weakened alliances by pulling out of major international agreements. 4, his rhetoric around the 2020 election undermined trust in the democracy. And 5, these are only the 5 I could come up with for how I can, give state facts. And number 5 is his environmental rollbacks, reverse protections for clean air and water. From their view, yes, he used constitutional powers, but often in ways that harmed unity, trust, and stability, in their opinion, of course. So part 6, let's take it from a conservative Christian perspective for both sides, okay? Because I know a lot of Christians, they say, like, even when we did our standout, Christians are like, how can you go out and stand out and support Trump when you're a Christian? You can't call yourself a Christian. You're a fake Christian. And I saw the word fake Christian probably like 20 times, and I'm tired of hearing it. So this is how we're going to explain this, okay, guys? As Christians, many of us see politics through a lens of Scripture. And even when the conservative Christian community, or even within it, there are two perspectives on President Trump, okay? So there's not just one, there's multiple, okay? On one side, some believers point to Romans 13, which says that, let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. They believe Trump was put in office by God's providence and that his actions to defend the Constitution, from appointing judges to supporting ICE under the Supremacy Clause, were him fulfilling his duty to uphold order and justice. They see him as a flawed man, yes, but one God is using for a greater purpose, like how he has used leaders in the Bible who weren't perfect but still served his plan. Like, I actually had a Christian come up to me today and we had a really good debate about this, and he brought up Saul. Saul, they wanted a king, so God said, okay, we'll give you Saul. And yeah, it didn't work out. Ultimately, it ended up being eventually David, as the chosen king. But Saul was originally, at that time, they wanted him and they had him, and you saw how that went. Not every leader is going to be perfect, and it's not always going to go, it's eventually going to lead to something else, but we have to just trust in God's plan. If God didn't want Trump as our president, he wouldn't be there. Everything happens for a reason, and we can't ask God why things are the way they are. We can, pray to him and yell and say why, but we can't be judging him. We have to just follow through and essentially keep faith. You have to keep faith in God that this is what he desires for our future, that this is what he wants in the moment, okay? It's not our choice to decide why God, nobody can answer that. Only God, On the other side, other Christians look at verses like John 13:34. A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. In Micah 6:8, to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. They worry that Trump's rhetoric and divisive style doesn't reflect humility, mercy, or love. For them, even if his policies line up with conservative values, the way he leads matters just as much as the policies themselves. So within the same faith, you can have two different convictions, one emphasizing on God using leaders despite their flaws, or the other emphasizing that leaders should model Christ's character and how they govern. And that is pretty much like the biggest divide between us Christians right now. And I hope that you guys can use this, like when you're debating them, this would be the best way to understand their perspective, and then you can try to use that to your, advantage in a way, but understand their perspective and you can definitely debate them better, because then you can know how they're feeling, and where their conviction comes from. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold still. Part 7, thought exercises for the week. Are you ready, guys? So before we wrap up, I want to leave you with some thought exercises for you to wrestle with this week. Are you ready? I'm so excited for this because I had to pick these out and figure these out, and we're going to go with this, all right? And I didn't just choose one. I had to choose a couple because it might not be applicable to one person, or one person might not have any interest, so I wanted to make it broad. Number 1, the Constitution versus conscience. So think about this, guys. If a president acts fully within the Constitution, but you don't agree with their style or tone, is that good leadership, or is that not good enough? Where do you draw the line between legality and morality? Okay, so that's one thought. Number 2 would be, what would Jesus do in politics? Apply the ideas of justice, mercy, and humility when you think about leaders today. How should those traits weigh against their constitutional actions? Number 3, role reversal, and I love doing these. Imagine if the exact same constitutional actions Trump took were done by somebody else, okay? Completely. So imagine it wasn't Trump at all. Would you still support them because they were constitutional, or would your reaction change? And number 4, ready? Citizenship as stewardship. If God calls us to be good stewards of what he has given us, what does that look like in a democracy? And how do we steward our vote, our voice, and our civic engagement responsibility? Gotta think about those. So I'm gonna close with some history quotes and a challenge for you guys. To close, I'll leave you with the words of leaders who remind us what freedom requires. Frederick Douglass once said, The life of a nation is secure only while the nation is honest, truthful, and virtuous. Theodore Roosevelt warned, to announce that there must be no criticism of the president is morally treasonable to the American public. Dwight D. Eisenhower reminds us, history does not long entrust the care of freedom to the weak or the timid. And John F. Kennedy inspired a generation with, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I know we've all heard that. You must do it. And Ronald Reagan warned us, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. So each of these quotes points us toward one challenge, to be truth seekers, not blindly loyal to any one leader and not swayed by headlines or social media or division, but seekers of truth, honesty, courage, and virtue, because only then can we carry freedom forward. So that's what I'm going to leave you with, guys, is that I really urge you to be a truth seeker. When you think that Trump isn't being a good president, I want you to look up the facts. To ask, okay, what has he done that makes him a bad president? And then look into what has he done good as well. And then ask, like, the things that he's done bad, what do you mean by bad? Do you think that they're morally bad, or do you think that he's not following the Constitution? And then look up the Constitution and see if he's within his limits, because he wouldn't be able to do it if he wasn't within his limits, okay? So that's very important to know, is he wouldn't be able to do it. That's just a thing, you know? I'm trying to think of anything else I can say. If you guys want to leave a response, feel free to email me at newenglandnextgen2025@yahoo. You can go on the website, which is newenglandnextgen.com. You can also comment on this YouTube, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts. I challenge you guys today. Can you please leave a comment there, like a question that I can answer, like something that you want to know. I try to come up with different ideas to talk about based on what the political climate is, because I feel like, at least for the people who want to know how they should be feeling, or what they should be feeling, or what I think about it, or what somebody else thinks about it, I try to cover all of it so you can understand both sides, so that you're like not lost. And there's a lot of young people that watch this that are trying to figure out and navigate all of the misinformation, and I'm trying to bring them the truth. I've already had to ask, I asked someone on Facebook, he knew a lot of facts about what Trump has done as accomplishments for our country, and I asked him to give me the full essay, and he did. So, and then I had to fact check that. I can't just take that guy's words, because he's just a random, Joe Schmo, and you have to figure out what he actually did and get those facts. So I urge you to be truth seekers, okay? Find the facts. If you can't find them, you can ask ChatGPT. It's not always going to give you the answer, but then you can feel free to leave a comment in here, and I will look it up for you. I will, seek the truth in every question that you guys ask, and I will try to deliver for you. I also want to announce that I have just become, the president of my TPUSA chapter at Wentworth. So feel free to ask me a bajillion questions about that, and feel free to ask me if you want to start a chapter in your own school or your own college. Feel free to ask me anything about that as well. If anybody, I want to open up this weird, I just got this last minute thought. I do want to open it up that if anybody has any prayer requests, that you make them known to, you can just email them to me. You don't have to voice them on a, YouTube comment to the whole world. I did get it, today I got a mother who reached out to me, and her oldest son, her youngest is in college right now, and he's at Wentworth. And her oldest son, he committed suicide, and she reached out to me. I can't say names or anything like that. I want to keep her identity safe. She reached out to me and asked, if there's any way that I could help reach her younger son to help him, navigate the loss of his older brother. And, I'm not Jesus, so I can't, I'm not perfect, so I'm not sure how I could help him. But I feel like one way I can help him is to ask you guys to pray for his mother who reached out to me. and to also pray for his, this brother that's at Wentworth, and to pray for his family, because that's horrible that they lost someone. And I know a lot of people, I don't say it on my videos, but a lot of people reach out to me with like requests for me to like reach out and how can I help them in some form of way, because they're reaching out. And so I want to start throwing that in at the end. Like, if you have a prayer request, please just email me. I'll say the email again. It's New England Next Gen 2025. So New England, I'll put it in the description of the episode. So just go in there. That way I don't mess it all up and trying to spell it out. Go into the description of this video, and in any of the videos, I'm pretty sure it states the website at the bottom. So feel free to go to the email or the website, and you can contact me and just leave the prayer request there, and I will bring it up. I won't mention you. It doesn't have to be even like a stated name or anything like that. But I just want to throw that in there, because there are people that are watching that will pray for you, and we love you guys. I love you guys, and we just want to make the world a better place. So that's New England Next Gen. I'm Sarah Howard, and I shall return another day. Bye, guys.